Mine is the only voice you
What
hear.
have I been doing?
Lay down my autonomy.
After that, it got very dark very quickly.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Cults to Consciousness. My name is Shalise Ansola, your host, and I love it when you guys join us live, so thank you so much for being here. Make sure to leave those questions, comments in the chat below. We will be answering questions soon. Today we have back on a guest who everybody loves, of course, I knew they would. He is a ball of sunshine, and he's currently traveling for work as a flight attendant. He grew up in the Mennonites, and he's going to tell you which settlement and all about them. Thank you for coming back, JT.
Thank you for having me again. So yeah, my name is
Yes.
JT. I grew up in Seminole, Texas, among the Old Colony Mennonites. Some people from back home will probably connect or correct me and be like, "You were in Lamba, you were in Old Colony." So my church is a small offshoot, but our like genetic group is called Old Colony Mennonites. And so yeah, I grew up in Seminole, Texas. I was partially homeschooled until about sixth grade, and then I went to the private Mennonite school until 13 years old, after which I worked full time, got my GED, and then joined the military and did that for 4 years. Wasn't really my thing. Got out of it, and so now here I am. I'm as a flight attendant. I'm in Green Bay, Wisconsin today. Um, Here for like 12 hours, so got in at 2 a.m. yesterday, so super glamorous. But yeah, that's just like my little elevator speech.
Yes, I think the top comment or one of the top comments was, "Oh my gosh, he's so cute. I want him to be my flight attendant one day." So you might get
Hopefully not after
recognized one
like
day.
hopefully it's not after like a 4 hour delay like yesterday when I'm just like, sit down, please.
Totally
Let's go.
drained. Yes. So you left fairly young. Well, yeah, you were 18. I think it was the second you were able to get out of the Mennonite group. And it's one of those things where you were constantly bullied inside the group for your sexuality, which you hadn't even fully discovered yet or leaned into yet. And finally, when you got out, you could be yourself and lean into your authenticity. And everyone was commenting how articulate and how grounded you are and how you have such a good head on your shoulders after leaving. However, we know that it takes a while to get to that point. And so we wanted to talk more about that today, especially when it comes to I don't know what I don't know until all of a sudden it hits me in the face and I realize I was missing something in my education or how the world works. So let's talk about the schooling, and maybe we start with the homeschooling and just tell us a little bit about the curriculum, where it came from, and any aha moments specifically from that type of education that you realize you were not taught. And everyone who's watching live, make sure to leave your questions and comments in the chat, and we'll be answering those shortly. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was homeschooled from about 4 years old using the Christian Light Education curriculum, which I believe is an old order curriculum. I should have looked into it a little bit more before we did this, but it comes from I think either Pennsylvania or Indiana. And the reason why my parents did that is because my dad had to travel for work. He worked in agriculture, and they didn't want to put us in public school, that kind of thing. And so that curriculum pretty much just focuses on math, language arts, Bible, and then there's reading, but reading is also Bible, and then there's social studies, but social studies was also Bible or Mennonite history. And so having gone until sixth grade, like they didn't focus anything on like American history unless it directly correlated with like the Protestant movements in the Americas. They didn't really focus on yeah, there was no teaching of like slavery, the wars, any of the normal stuff that people learn. And then yeah, so it was just like very, very limited. And so after I left, I just somebody will mention something and then I'll have to go and look into it later because I literally just don't know.
Do you remember, were there any standout moments to you going about life when someone mentioned any of the big things like Civil War or slavery or even Holocaust that you were like, what is that?
Actually, yeah. When one time me and my mom, we flew up to Cleveland because my parents had an Amish furniture store at one point. They would buy furniture from the Amish up in Ohio and sell it in Texas because the Mennonites stopped building furniture when they moved to the US and discovered Ashley furniture. Um, so
That's so funny.
they had a store for a little bit. Because yeah, nobody builds furniture in the US anymore, at least not in my like colony. And we were flying back, and I remember my mom said something, which my mom, this was actually a little bit racist now looking back. My mom saw some people that they might have been Muslim, I'm not even sure. And then she started talking about 9/11. And I remember I didn't even know, my mom told me Twin Towers. And until I was probably, this might have even been until like a little bit before I joined the military, until my later teens. I thought, oh, they flew into cell phone towers. What's the big deal about that? I don't know why in my head I thought cell phone towers. I didn't know that they
Yeah.
flew into the Twin Towers until probably like 15, 16, 17, because we weren't taught anything like that. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, like I didn't learn about the Holocaust, any of the big like American events until my mid to late teens, just when I like was sneaking on the internet and just watching YouTube for hours and hours a day.
So is that something that you would look into? So you finally have access to the internet, or you're sneaking access to the internet, and are you looking up history with that
I
time?
was just, I would watch vlogs, I would watch like documentaries about different stuff. It was like during that time, during my teenage years, I was so very miserable that my um like access to the world, or like my lens was pretty much just I had a music player that I wasn't supposed to have explicit music on, but it was ran through YouTube. And so I realized I could use the music player on my little iPod Touch because I couldn't have a smartphone to watch YouTube videos. And that was how I would just watch. That's how I discovered I wanted to be a flight attendant. And yeah, I would just watch just people living, just normal stuff, history stuff. And that was really where I developed my understanding of almost everything, which wasn't 100% correct since it's from the internet, but I learned that later.
Right. I guess it's just really telling for me that when a teenage boy finally has access to the internet and is looking up history and just how the world works, that just shows you how much you are yearning for that outsider's life, or for something different than what you were
Mhm.
given as a child.
Because we were very, very sheltered. And that's what's funny is on my mom's side, the non-practicing people, they had access to the internet because they were like they just lived pretty much normal lives. And then on my dad's side, the super strict Mennonite side, they weren't even really tech savvy enough to where when their kids did get a hold of smartphones, they had access to everything. So the fact that my mom did have a little bit of like knowledge from the way she grew up is why our household specifically was super restrictive, because they were just like, he's gonna watch explicit stuff, he's gonna watch explicit stuff, and they would like go through my iPod Touch looking for stuff, and they'd be like, why do you have a million pictures of planes downloaded? Like, what's up with that?
But did you even know explicit material existed out there? Because as far as I'm aware, within these communities, and not all of them, and they all have varying degrees of strictness, but most of them have zero sex education and hide things, as far as they don't even tell
Hmm.
you what pregnancy is. So did you even know that that was an option for you?
I honestly, I don't think I knew like what sex was until I was probably 14 or 15, partially just because I wasn't really interested in that whole side of things. And then when I would hear about, like, my parents would talk about pornography, and I thought it was just like women in bikinis and stuff like that. I didn't realize what it even was until probably like 15, 14, 15, 16, which makes me sound very naive, but I just didn't know.
Yeah. No, I get that. I'm pretty sure it was the same for me. So don't feel bad. And I was not isolated. I had access to internet. It was just all I knew was it was bad. And if you watch it, you're going to hell. So I feel
Yeah,
like
we were
that's
so
pretty
uneducated that
standard.
like in the like youth groups, for somebody, this is terrible, but for like for a girl to be called a slut, it was just like, oh, she kissed two guys in one day. That's absolutely crazy. That's diabolical. Like, we didn't know about, well, other people did, but like I was so sheltered, I didn't know about any of that.
Yeah. I'm surprised that your parents were actually openly saying that word in front of you because that's what you could easily Google and be like, what does this mean?
Yeah, I didn't even think to because I thought like if I ever Googled anything like that, immediately just like the like I don't know. I just thought the internet would know somehow or something. I was always given by my family like a super guilty conscience. And so I was able to be controlled by knowing like, oh my gosh, what if they find out? So yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so this is gonna sound funny. Is your phone on airplane mode by chance? Or is it on do not disturb? Because you're coming in a little fuzzy, and I wondered if that's maybe why. Because I know we're on an iPad.
My iPad. Oh yeah, it is on airplane mode. Let me just turned off airplane mode.
Yeah,
That might do it a
maybe
little.
yeah, maybe it'll give us a stronger connection. Just try it out. But I can hear you fine. It's just a little
Okay.
blurry. Okay, so let's see if we have any questions from anybody. Questions, comments. What group of Mennonite are you from? Yeah, you gave a very detailed and excellent history of the Mennonites before. Maybe give just like a brief version of that so people understand the type of colony.
Yeah. So I'm from the Old Colony Mennonites. So in the like main groups there you have the Amish, you have the Hutterites, you have the Old Order Mennonites and the Old Colony Mennonites. And the difference is the Old Order Mennonites when they were fleeing what is now like Belgium, the Netherlands, northwestern Germany, they went to North America. My people went
Mhm.
to Prussia, which people corrected me on the exact timeline, which I wasn't taught history, so this is just what I know. But
Yeah.
when we went to Prussia and were there for a little bit. I don't think it was like a century or anything like that. And then we were in from Prussia, we went to what is now, I believe, Ukraine, and were there until I think around World War One, and then came to Canada and then Mexico. So the difference between us and the Old Order is they speak a different dialect of German. They speak I think they speak Pennsylvania Dutch. We speak Plotich, which is it's almost like a fusion of like English, not even really English, but like Dutch and German. It's so much so to where I can't even really understand like a Pennsylvania Dutch speaker or like a like German speaker or like a Dutch speaker. Um, and then the other main differences is most of our colonies, we do have cars, we have electricity. People have the internet, they're not supposed to, but they have internet, they have TVs. It's mostly just the women have to wear homemade dresses, they have to wear the headscarves. Men are supposed to wear collared shirts, tuck their shirts in, no shorts. But yeah, I'd say those are probably the main differences. And the main difference is like just where we split off and where we went after we left where we originally came from.
Okay. And the colony or the settlement that you were in, how many people would you say were in that?
Ooh, I know in our church specifically, I think we were up to 800 members last time I went. And then
That's a
we were the
lot.
slightly smaller one, the proper Old Colony Church, the church, not the group. I think they were in the thousands somewhere. But that whole community of Seminole is at this point mostly Mennonite. And it's so much so to where everyone is moving in. The housing prices have like completely inflated to where the 2021 stuff that happened didn't even really affect it because that's how big the Mennonite community is there in that small town.
Oh, you mean the 2020 stuff?
Yeah,
Or
like
what
when the housing
2021?
prices went up like crazy, it
Oh,
didn't even
because of the
affect
low
Seminole,
interest
Texas
rates.
because our prices were already super high because so many people are trying to move in from Mexico, Canada, Bolivia, all the other colonies.
Okay. I guess
Mhm.
for some reason I didn't even consider how real estate would interact with the or the English world when you're already so separate. Are, are you building your own houses? Are you moving into pre-existing houses? I guess I'm imagining like a settlement that is just kind of off the grid and homes that are built by you guys. But is that not how it works for you?
That's how it is in Mexico, like where my grandpa lived the last
Okay.
time I visited him, and that's how it mostly is in Canada. In Seminole, though, in Texas, they moved kind of into this city. They were closer to this city. And so Seminole, all there is really around there is a little bit of farming and oil. And so when you have all these Mennonites coming in and they're working up to like a 3 hour radius around the whole region doing construction, doing farming, all that stuff. And then, of course, they want to live in this one city. The housing prices, of course, supply and demand, they just go up like crazy. And the economy there is like really booming more than it should be because really, like, what does this, like, my great grandma on my mom's side, who's not Mennonite, said she came there before the Mennonites were there and it was like a ghost town. And so that's kind of
Hmm.
like what happened there is everyone just moved in and the prices just shot up for everything.
That's so interesting. And how are Mennonites affording this with, because also, and maybe my brain is just like, this is overload. I'm trying to figure this out, put
Yeah,
all the pieces
sorry.
together. Because no, it's great, but I guess I just never considered this part. Aren't they pretty much communal living where they just kind of move people around, or do families have to come up with their own way to buy this house, and how are they affording it if the prices are so high? I mean, does that
It's
make any sense?
it's everyone does like kind of handles their own financials. It's very separate in that way. And how
Mhm.
people are affording it is like a lot of them are moving in from other countries. They have lots of kids. All of the kids work. And in Mennonite culture, until you are moved out of your parents' house, in most households, all of the income goes to the parents. And so often people will come to Seminole. They'll rent like a trailer or a small living situation. And then a lot of, because it's its own economy there, a lot of loans are done between different Mennonites there. Like it has its own
Okay.
economy. They're giving people personal loans. Like my sister, she got her house through a personal loan, and that's how they're doing it. Because yeah, it is like moving from Mexico, where they're literally living on like probably a quarter of the income that they have in the U.S. It's like it is a little bit of a jump, but since it's already such an established community, like I always tell people that are like ex-LDS, I'm like, it's kind of like the Provo for Mennonites.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, that makes sense because I know that you don't really interact with banking systems or outside worldly systems, certainly not law enforcement. And so I wondered how that worked and how you were able to qualify for a house or something. But now it's all making sense. Okay, let's see if there are any other questions. We went off on a
Yeah,
tangent there.
yeah, sorry.
Thank you for your honest sharing of your very personal journey. Grew up with many Mennonite neighbors and friends. Have heard so many things that you have said. Some of the girls were so sheltered. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure the girls, did you notice the girls being more kept from certain information than the boys? I guess it's hard to know.
100%. So boys, oftentimes we would get phones or smartphones and stuff because we had jobs. We're working from very young ages. Girls are kept in the house. They have to work with their mom. They have to learn to become homemakers. And so most girls, my sisters had driver's license and got GEDs, but that's the exception, not the rule. Most of my cousins don't have driver's license. They don't really start, they don't even have their own vehicle until they get married. And there's just a lot of things they don't know. Like they can never even consider leaving or anything like that because not only do they not have the education, a lot of them don't even speak English because they've been kept in the house so much. And so they are kept a lot more separate because they don't have an excuse to go out in the world. And so they're
Mm.
just basically just kept in the house and kept at home.
That was one thing I wanted to ask you was about the language. Did you learn English in your school, at least when you went to the private Mennonite school?
No. No, everything, the whole entire, if you could even call it a curriculum, the curriculum was basically the Bible, which is a version of the Martin Luther King Bible. It's all in High German or like Germany German. And so all of our curriculum was in that dialect of German, which most of us don't even fully understand, or we just know how to read it and write it because that's what we had in school. And that was a whole big drama between my community and a community about 30 miles down the road in Brownfield. Is they got, I believe they're teaching Christian Light now, and they're teaching English. And that's a whole drama within the church because part of the reason my people left Canada in the first place was because they were supposed to teach English. So there is no English in the schools. You're not even supposed to talk English in the schools. And since my mom's first language is English and we mostly spoke English in the house along with our German, like it was a little bit tough to get into that because I wasn't the best at my language when I first got there.
That's so interesting. So, do you feel like you were called out or bullied in any way because you were speaking English, or did people just not really know?
Yeah, it was always a thing. That's why I think that's what helped me leave is that I never fully fit in with the Mennonites because they are not very accepting. They don't like outsiders, and my mom is like not purebred, whatever that means. Like my mom is not
Yeah.
pure Mennonite. My mom is mixed. Mixed. She's white, but and so yeah, like I was definitely they would make fun of the way that I spoke because I had an accent when I spoke my language. But then it's like you flip that around, and then I go and hang out with my cousins that go to public school, and I can't relate to them in any way either because I don't know anything that they know. So yeah, I was definitely picked on for the way I said things or the way I acted because I wasn't as hardcore Mennonite as like my cousins or other people in the school were.
Yeah. So, when you say public school, you mean the private Mennonite school or actual public school?
I don't know. I mean, like when I was around my cousins that weren't Mennonite that went to like the actual school system.
Oh, got it. But you never
That
went
like
to
I
that
didn't
actual
fully
school system.
no, no, like I didn't fully
Okay.
fit in with them and I didn't fully fit in with my cousins that went to the private school either.
Sure. That makes sense. So let's talk about the school when you went into the Mennonite school that wasn't the homeschooling curriculum. What was the curriculum like? What were they pulling from? What were you learning over there?
So everything, I believe we started every morning by singing out of our, we call it Yezonkbyuk, which just translates basically into hymnal or like songbook. We had to start by singing, and then we had to pray the Lord's Prayer. I believe that was the morning prayer. Um, and then we would have to read our catechism. We had a catechism that is about 60 pages of like the main points of the Bible that the Mennonite religion focuses on, and then with like the articles of faith in the back of it. We didn't read those, but we would just read over that like ritualistically because we didn't know what any of it meant. We were just reading the words, we're not comprehending any of them. And then we would have
Mhm.
a break, and then it would be another prayer followed by maybe some math or writing out of the Bible, followed by like lunch break, and then maybe more reading out of the Bible. Most of it was just a little bit of math, singing songs, or reading out of the catechism, or writing from the catechism or the Bible. There was no fully structured curriculum. It was just kind of like what the school board wanted us to learn, which was just the Bible essentially.
So you didn't have any sort of outside textbooks brought in?
There was none of that. You weren't even allowed to bring books to school or anything like that. Like that was just it was just this is the way we do it. We teach from basically the Bible, the Yuzongbyuk, the Catechism. They do their version of math, which is very, very basic, doesn't even get into algebra,
Just
and
gonna
that's
ask
it.
that. I was like,
That's
how
what
do
I
you
meant.
learn math from the Bible?
Yeah, yeah, no, that's what I meant when I was like, technically they say they teach to eighth grade because that's the standard. Of course, being in the US, they have to teach to a certain standard, which is not enforced. There's literally no testing in the school at all, no tests. But there isn't really proper grades. They split it up into age groups, but there's no proper grades because that's all they're really teaching from age 6 all the way up until age 14, which for most people just ends up being 13 because their parents want them to go to work.
Okay. So, how big of a culture shock was it for you when you go into the real world and you're going into the military, which I don't know if there are any tests involved there, but you become a flight attendant, you get your GED. Was it like, "Whoa, what is all this testing business about?"
When I got my GED, it was kind of like homeschooling because we did have technically tests when I was homeschooled. And I just didn't really stress it too much because I was already working. I was 17 when I got my GED, so I was already working and I had to go every day after work. And I worked from pretty much like 6 to 5 every day. No, 7 to 6 every day at that time. So after work, I'd have to go to these GED classes. And luckily, I do pick up on things very fast, but I literally just picked up as much as I could so that I could test because I just didn't like, I've never fully grasped like algebra or like what is it called? Pythagorean theorem. That's what they're trying to teach
Yeah.
us. I don't even know.
Pythagorean
And
theorem.
Yeah, I knew that there were tests that I had to pass, and I just wanted to pass them so that I could pretty much move on with my life. So I started those classes in September of 2020, and then I graduated. My last test was math because I did each of my tests on different days. My last test was math, and I ended up doing that on February, and that was the one I did the worst in just because I didn't really ever grasp like algebra or anything like that, which sometimes
Mhm.
I still feel dumb to this day, but I'm like, well, I know how to do math in my head.
I mean, is it even necessary? We have computers now. We have our phones. It's like it's so funny. Jonathan and I were just standing outside of like a mathnasium yesterday, I think it was, and there was a fraction, an equation on the window, and he's like, "Do you know how to solve that?" I'm like, "Babe, I don't remember." It doesn't really matter anymore, does it? But that's so funny. Yeah, I was thinking about, let's see, geez, now I just lost my train of thought. You were talking about, oh, I had my numbers wrong. I thought that you got your GED at 21, but you got it in the year 2021.
I got it in the year of 2021 because I had to have it to join the military.
Okay. Okay, so that makes sense. What was your family's reaction to that? Were they okay with you testing outside of the bubble, the Mennonite bubble, and getting this, I guess you could consider outside education?
That was the one thing that I have to give my parents. They were actually encouraging of that because my mom knows enough people and we lived outside of the community enough to where my mom was able to see like, hey, in Seminole you don't need a GED to have a job. In Seminole you just you know people, you go ask them for a job. But anywhere outside of there for us to go anywhere, we needed at least like a diploma or GED. So that was encouraged by my mom. My mom will take full credit for it because you know, she's a social media influencer, life coach, all that stuff. But that's one thing I do have to give them. They were encouraging of it. It was just like they claim to be encouraging of it, but then it's like you're making me work full time as a teenager. When am I supposed to find time to actually invest in this kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, I feel like okay, we're gonna leave a cliffhanger here because we got to get to some questions, but I just have to
Sorry.
understand how your mom is a social media influencer when you're not supposed to have the internet. Hold that answer. We'll go to some other questions and then we'll go back to that. What was the culture shock like when you went into the military? Oh, yes.
I did not realize when I joined that everything I knew about the military was from a few YouTubers that I had watched, which mostly didn't even talk about it. They were just like commentary, comedy type stuff, and movies. So what I thought I was going to be going into this like there's going to be these men and it's going to be and it's like first of all you join the Air Force, not the Army or the Marines. So that's like that's already like that wasn't going to be the case. And
Different.
then second of all like yeah, I got there and everyone's talking about anime. They're talking about high school. They're talking about what music they like. They're, using meme language. And it was just like, what? I was like, what are you talking about? Most of the time, it was a culture shock because again, you don't know how much you know until you're out of the community. And a lot of people, they think you left the Mennonite church, but you're still in the community. You still have that in common with everybody around you and everybody knows where you come from. But then it's like, once you're like me, you're the only one in this group of people that mostly have similar upbringings. It was just like what? Like it was a huge culture shock. Like I even had a panic attack one day because I was just like I'm not with my people. Like I don't know. I don't even know how to talk to these people or anything. And then also the German in us, we're very straightforward people. We just tell it like it is. And I would offend so many people because I'd be like, no, just do it like this. And they'd be like, you don't have to be rude about it. I'm like, I'm not being rude. I'm telling you, do it like this. Like one day specifically, we were learning how to make beds. And they taught us like taco style versus like hamburger style. And I was like, fold it hamburger style. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, you're folding it taco style, fold it over this way, hamburger style. And I just got so frustrated, I just had to leave because I was just like, I don't know how to communicate with these people.
Wait, so in your Mennonite community, you were using the terms taco and hamburger style?
No, no, that's what they taught us in basic training. And then I was
Oh,
trying to help people learn so that we wouldn't, get yelled at. And I was trying to teach
yeah.
them what I had just learned because I mean, me, like, not to get too dark, but like the trauma in me is like someone's yelling at you, they're telling you something, they're teaching you something, pick it up very quickly, grasp it very quickly, and do. And so, other people they're not wired like that to immediately just like, and so I'd be trying to teach them, but I'd be getting impatient because I don't know how to communicate with them because they even just communicate so different from the way I did when I first
Yeah.
left.
That's an interesting point that I hadn't considered, that immediate compliance that feels so innate in you because of the harsh punishments. When well, I guess it's tricky and it depends on where you're at in the military, and I'm sure there are lots of variants here, but in the military, did you feel like that level of punishment was held the same amount of fear, or were there punishments that got you to continue that compliance, or was there a moment where you're like, oh, I'm actually safe here, maybe I'll get yelled at, but it's okay if I fold it taco style every now and then?
The military at first was very scary because it brought out that like fight or flight in me. But again, having come from such a very strict and invasive household, I quickly, once I learned, I was like, wait, they're gonna yell, but they're never gonna lay hands.
Mhm.
And then I went through when we had masks, and how I get through everything is I've just like smiled and laughed my way through. Like when people are trying to bring me down, I'm smiling. And so I just learned how to get away with everything, just like I did in the not trying to sound like, oh, I was this edgy kid, but like I just learned how to not get caught doing things essentially in the military. And yeah, like the masks also in basic training, like I would stand there and smile and basically laugh at them as they're yelling at me because they can't see what my face is doing other than my eyes and they don't know me.
Yeah.
So one day that actually caught me up because I was in the dining facility and I forgot my jams and jellies for like the French toast, and we didn't even have syrup because supply shortages in 2021. And so I was going to grab jams and jellies and yogurts to make this like French toast sandwich. I don't know what I was doing. And I'm in line, I'm grabbing my jams and jellies, and there was this table. Anyone who's gone through Air Force basic training knows that there's a table at the end of the like buffet or whatever. That's the snake pit. It's where all the instructors sit when they're eating. And so I'm standing here and I hear one yell. And they're like, "What are you doing?" And I look up, I was like, "Oop, who's getting yelled at?" They're like, "No, we're not talking to somebody else, we're talking to you." And then I was making all these faces and I didn't have my mask on. That's why they were yelling in the first place. And then because I didn't have my mask on, they could see like I didn't have the military bearing they were looking for. But yeah, I know I'm rambling again, but yeah, that's like I think I've always been able to learn where the line is and how to stay within it or cross it without getting caught. And that sounds bad, but it's just like that's just how I learned to get through everything.
No, that makes sense. And laughing is also a trauma response that is super common with ex Mormons. And I've talked about this before. I didn't even really recognize it until I started this podcast. And if you guys watch some of the earlier episodes, which I refuse to because it's probably really cringy to watch myself when I'm trying to navigate this and figure out how to podcast, but I was laughing a lot. I was giggling. And it's not that I was laughing at the guest. It was just like, oh my gosh, that's so crazy that I would just laugh a little bit. And I remember Jonathan being like, "Babe, I wonder, it seems like you're laughing a little bit too much during these interviews." I was like, "I am?" Because when you would say it outside of the context of me being in the space, I was like, "That's horrible. They probably think I'm laughing at them." But I realized it was my own trauma response coming up to fill the space and make me feel more comfortable because of uncomfortable things. Because I feel like within Mormonism, at least from my experience and some other people I've spoken to, it's always put on a happy face, always
Mhm.
look like everything's fine, and have this toxic perfectionism veneer. And so if you're sad, you're not going to cry. You're going to be like, everything's fine, slowly dying inside.
Yeah, the Mennonite religion honestly is a very like gothic, dark religion because of what they come from, especially like the Old Colony Mennonites. But that is one thing, like, yeah, I definitely developed that trauma response and I realized that in the military. And then after I got out of basic training, even like I was, of course, low ranking. I had just started, but I worked for a commander or like I worked for commanders the whole entire time I was in the military because I worked in the commander support staff office, which is basically like you're basically like a secretary. And so I'd be working with these high ranking people and I might be getting in trouble for something. And I'd be sitting there like, and they'd be like, "Why are you smiling right now?" that's disrespectful. And I'd be like, what? Like, I'm trying not to make an angry face, because if I make angry
Yeah.
face, that's going to elicit in my head like a violent response. So I'm just going to be like, and now I notice, even I'm about to get Botox because now I don't do the smiling thing. But if a passenger comes on and they like do something to irritate me, I'll be like, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The brows just go so high up in my head. I'm like, I'm gonna get wrinkles here. I need to get this
Oh my
all
gosh,
frozen.
you do not need Botox. Don't do it. Okay, let's take a few more questions. Are there Black Mennonites? Interesting.
Um, Not in my colony. There is not any Black Mennonites. They're very racist against Black people. There are some mixed with Hispanic, especially from the Bolivia and the Mexican settlements, because they're so used to being around them. But they don't really allow anyone to join. And then they're so racist that, like, I know of, in one of the more liberal or more progressive churches, I know of a couple that adopted a Black child, and then they sent him to the more progressive Mennonite school, and he was just bullied so much. It was actually very sad that they
Hmm.
adopted him and they didn't even take into consideration like how the family or the
Yeah,
community would accept that. So I can confidently say there's probably no Black Mennonites, at least not from the Old Colony group.
that's heartbreaking. Was there blatant racism taught to you? And if so, how did that affect your views and perspectives once you were interacting with people of other races after you left?
I was always taught by my mom, because my mom has a half brother, because there's plenty of that. My mom has a half brother that's actually Hispanic. And then my mom also has an American, or what we call American, non-Mennonite mom. And so I was always taught to be a little bit more tolerant, but even like my non-Mennonite side of the family comes from North Carolina. So there was a lot of like stereotypes that were taught. And then on my dad's side of the family, just 100% racist, just using the N word in German, or like race, any kind of racial slurs. They have a racial slur for everybody. They don't accept like, yeah, it's definitely taught. And it's like there's literally sayings like, since they have their own separate language and they think no one can understand them, they'll be like, oh, if you don't, moms in the grocery stores, and I've heard this, oh, if you don't act nice, I'll let the uncle come and get you. If you don't act nice, they'll literally say, I'll let the Mexican come and get you, to their kids, to threaten them. It's crazy.
Yikes.
And I laugh, but it's actually, it's crazy. It's really crazy. So I'm thankful that I came from a family where I was able to see a little bit more to not turn out like that. But there was definitely things I had to learn after getting out. Like, I would say certain things, or I wouldn't think anything of it, and then somebody'd be like, "Whoa, that's not," and I'd be like, and I had to learn, like, you can't be defensive. Just listen to what they have to say and try to understand where they're coming from. Because, like, it's not
Yeah.
necessarily that people think you're a terrible person. It's just like they're just correcting you and letting you know.
Yeah. It was probably obvious to a lot of people that you were just clearly misinformed and that you didn't have malicious intent, at least from what I know of you, having done our
I
interview.
think for the most part, they could see that it was just, for lack of a better word, ignorance. But I
Yeah.
wasn't choosing to stay ignorant. And so what really helped me is, like, my best friend is Haitian. And so I remember I met her when I was in Mississippi for training about 4 years ago. And she told me she grew up in the Bahamas and she was from Haiti. And I remember I asked her just so many questions, because I had never met anyone that was Caribbean. I had never met anyone like from any background like that. And so she'll often tell me things, even to this day. Like, a few years ago, we're having a conversation and we were talking about credit, and she was like, yeah, well, I couldn't do that. And I'm like, what do you mean you couldn't do that? You have a good credit score. And she's like, well, I look like this. And I'm like, are you serious? And she's like, yeah, there's a reason I only deal with Black banks and I only deal with Black realtors. And I was like,
Whoa.
and that was just like, my head like exploded, because I was like, where I'm from, super right wing, they want to teach everybody that this stuff doesn't exist anymore and that it's just all made up. And I was just like, whoa,
Eye-opening.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, especially if you didn't know about the Civil War or segregation or anything like that. It was probably also a shock to find out the country you were living in.
Yeah, yeah. Like, I only had, until my late teens, I only had like casual knowledge that that even existed, because my mom, since she went to the public school system, would casually say things. But like my mom talked so much that me and my sisters really a lot of times she would talk about something or briefly mention something and we didn't even really question it. We just were like, oh, that happened. So we didn't like, yeah. Like when I really found out how things actually happened, like I remember I went with this friend. We took a trip to DC and we went to I forget what exactly the museum is called there, but it's the Black History Museum. And I was like, I remember just like coming out of there and like she's just having a normal day still and I walked out of there and I'm like depressed and I'm sad and I'm like this happened, like I can't believe this. And yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in, I'm sure. So
Hmm.
many things to take in, even just how to get a credit card, right? Something that's simple or basic for most people. And I mean, the school systems now don't even really prepare you for the world. They just teach you how to become employees, right? But so it's
Right.
hard for us to even do normal things. But I can't imagine being so sheltered that all of it is like completely new. I just saw that we had new channel members. Thank you guys so much for joining. We just launched these a couple weeks ago. Thank you. You have special YouTube privileges for being a channel member. Some people prefer it over Patreon, and we are going to start doing some behind the scenes stuff for our channel members if you want to get access to special videos for just you. So thank you guys for joining. I appreciate you. Oh my gosh, super chat. Wait, is that Lissa? You changed your username. I was like, I recognize that photo. I think that's you. Aloha. Our youngest son went into the military at 17, early enlistment. He did boot camp between his junior and senior year of high school, finished AIT training after graduation. He served 4 years. Wow. Oh, thank you for sharing that. And thank you for the super chat. That's so generous of you. That is Lissa, right? I think that's what it says on the profile picture. If not, I'm really sorry, but I think it is. Let me know if that's you. Um, wow. JT has a lot of presence and he's really sharp. I agree. I see a bright future for him.
Thank
Yes.
you.
And so stories with gay friends. So yeah, did you meet any friends that you're like, oh my gosh, I can just be myself around you and we can have fun and talk about things and I can ask them questions. What was that exploration like, or have you been able to do that yet?
It's been really interesting because most of my friends in the military just ended up being women, some gay, some straight, whatever, bisexual, but like most of them ended up being women because with the men, there's still always that stigma like, oh, like he wants to whatever. And it's like, no, I just, want to be social.
Just want to
And
exist.
then what I find, which is crazy with a lot of the gay people in the Air Force, is there was just so little of us that it would almost be like, competition. Like every every unit has their token gay person who's like the flashy one, but like we were
Really?
almost like I didn't try to be like that, but it was like almost very we were very standoffish with each other. Like I did not make a lot of I tried to make gay friends in the military, but like even one like I was talking to this one Marine and I had this gay friend from my basic training class, and then he goes and like snatches him or whatever. And I was just like, okay, whatever, y'all can have each other. But it was just stuff like that, just like forced drama. And
Yeah.
that's one thing I told myself. I was like, I love my women friends, but I was like, I want to have more male friendships. I want to have more gay friends. Just like, I was like, all of my friends are women, and there's just like, I don't know. I was like, there's definitely a reason that I don't have any, and I was like, I need to try more in that aspect.
So did that change going into becoming a flight attendant or after the military?
Um, After the military, and this will probably change once I go to my other company that I'm now going to, but this company that I work at, for example, the trip that I'm on right now, it's just me and the pilots. Our planes are so small that it's only
Whoa.
me working in the back. And the most I'll ever have is one other flight attendant, and most of the time they're women. And so
Mhm.
it's kind of like it's not much different. Once I get to my next company, their planes typically have like four flight attendants, and so I'm actually looking forward to that, being able to be more social, meet more people, because it is very isolating. Like this is a 4 day trip that I'm on right now. Today's day 3 of 4, and just like it's just me and pilots. Most of them married, they have their own lives and whatever. They're not really like, oh, let's go
Yeah.
hang out.
Is that so boring being by yourself on a plane?
It's boring. It's a little bit, sometimes it's peaceful, but it does get very boring for sure. Like yesterday, not one of my flights did I have service. They're all so short up and down that I'm just boarding, sitting here, waiting to take off, waiting to land, buy people, new people. And was it 4 or 5 flights that I worked yesterday? So it was like, yeah, it does get a little bit boring, but I'm off to greener pastures hopefully in March. So
Yeah, that's exciting. So, what do you do on the planes when you're sitting there? Are you finding yourself still wanting to learn or listening to podcasts, or are you just kind of taking a breather and enjoying your life outside of your bubble of Mennonites?
uh, I try I try not to be on my phone because I'm not supposed to. And I was reading Danielle's book on her experience in the military and all that. Her book, oh my gosh, now I'm
Yeah,
uncultured.
uncultured. Yeah.
Yesterday, I lost my lunchbox at the beginning of the day. Didn't even realize till the end of the day. So I guess I won't be reading any books today. But I'm really trying to get back into that because I'm like I get very sucked into my phone. I think like anybody else. But then I
Hmm.
find since I have like I'm very susceptible to like black and white thinking or being rage baited because of what I think because of my background. And so I'm like I need to read books. I need to journal. I need to do something with my brain other than just like oh my gosh, the world is terrible, you know? So I try to read books and or like keep, just reorganize my plane, make sure everything is the way I want it.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, let's see if we have more questions in the chat. Hey, thank you so much for the super chat. Keep up the good work. Super stickers too. Thank you so much. Is it Oh, I didn't see. It was Patricia, I think. What religion or ethnicity did your mom come from?
So my mom's side of the family are Southern Baptists. So I heard on that side,
Whoa. Hold on. That is wild. So your mom goes from Southern Baptist to becoming one of the most strict members of your Mennonite settlement.
yeah, because my mom and her siblings, they always had the choice because her mom is Southern Baptist, didn't really go to church that much, not super, super devout, but her mom comes from a super devout family. Like her great grandma, I believe that was a preacher couple. And like I heard that they were back when they were in North Carolina, they would perform like exorcisms and all kinds of very wild, like Southern Baptist stuff. But my mom ended up like her sisters ended up choosing to go more the Baptist route and that's what they do now. And then my mom ended up just fully leaning into her dad's side, which was Mennonite. So I don't really know much about that side, and I've never really met any cousins or like distant relatives from that side, just because it's not
Mm.
didn't really line up with what my family does.
Have you ever considered reaching out to them now?
I have. I'm like, I wonder where these like well, I know I have a great aunt that lives in Texas, and then like I have second cousins and stuff in California. But yeah, I always am interested, but I'm like, I don't even know where I'd start. And then if I talk to my grandma about it, she's just gonna be like, well, my sister and her kids, they're trashy. So it's like,
Yeah, I feel like that would be really interesting to get to know your family outside of the Mennonite communities.
yeah, because all I know about, like, I know a lot about my heritage because we're very proud of like our Mennonite heritage on the Mennonite side. And so that's kind of like what we always focus on because what I always found funny is when I started learning more about like the Mormon church and how proud they were of their descent, I was like, that church has been around since the 1900s. I was like, my people are super proud. Our church has been around since like the 1700s or something like that, or the
Uh-huh.
1600s. I was like, that's just so yeah, I am always a little bit curious about that side because it's like I know a lot about the Mennonite side. I don't know anything about that other side of my family.
So you've brought up the Mormon church a few times, and I have to know what your interaction has been with LDS people, or if you've looked into them or your perspective on them, because it's definitely in your awareness.
It's kind of like so the first person from the LDS church that I ever met was in basic training and I asked him if he was
Uh,
Mormon and immediately like door shut. And then I didn't think about that much until later when I started coming across your videos. I started watching Alyssa Grenfell, all that. So I
Nice.
started hearing of all that. And then I went to the airline I work for, that I'm not going to work for much longer, but the airline I work for right now is fully Mormon owned, headquarters in
No
St. George,
way.
Utah.
Oh,
And
I
so I
know what
had to be,
airline. I know the airline.
and so
Anyone who lives in
once
Utah knows.
once I came to work, yeah, it's kind of like some people call it the Mormon Air Force, but when I came to work there, that was right around the time when I was really like, I'll get into like hyper fixations. And for a while, me having grown up Mennonite, I was just interested because this is something that's getting very big, very talked about, and I didn't know much about it. And so I really had to watch out what I said because a lot of people, like even in my training class, they join this company specifically because it's LDSO and they want to work for like an LDS company. And so sometimes I have to be very careful like what I say because I'm just a very open person. Because yeah, after you hear about all the stuff, especially like the stuff that Alyssa posts about, it's like
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I would say that the church now is so diluted from what it used to be. The original prophets and the doctrines and the teachings were super super culty back in the day, incredibly dangerous too. And now they've like really diluted themselves to where it's unrecognizable from the initial, but it is still very high control. I mean, it fits the bite model, it fits all of that. I have a gripe with your airline. I'm glad you're leaving. 9-hour delay trying to get to St. George a few weeks ago just about killed me. Uh,
that's
but
so
anyway,
funny.
that's so interesting that you were just kind of plopped into this Mormon bubble after leaving a Mennonite bubble, because I'm sure you noticed some of the similarities as far as maybe being a little bit sheltered or um kind of tone deaf to certain things. I feel like I was really tone deaf to certain, like you were just talking about, the racism or just not being exposed to different cultures. You tend
Hmm.
to think certain ways that I look back and go, "Oh my gosh, I'm sorry for what I said when I was in a cult," which is why we have that t-shirt on our website because it's embarrassing. Oh geez. Okay, let's go on to some more questions before I just spiral out talking about Mormonism. How did your Okay, thank you for bringing this back up. How did your mom become a social influencer? Of course, whatever you're comfortable saying, because she's probably gonna end up saying this, and I don't want you to get in any trouble unless you don't care. But whatever you're willing to talk about, because this is very interesting.
So my mom owned a store, even though she's Mennonite, selling Amish bulk foods and like organic foods and Amish furniture. And through that, she would talk to a lot of ladies. And my mom is very outspoken. That's where I get my outspokenness from. I'm just on kind of opposite ends with her. And then after the store just, I mean, it didn't do well in the small town. And so they ended up having to close shop. But while she was on that store, she started a social media from the store, which kind of pivoted into her being on social media. And she only has about like, I think maybe she's at like 2,000 followers on Instagram now. But it's mostly people from around the community. And so she's well known around the community for like, she posts stuff about the Bible and marriage and all this stuff. And like, I mean, given my interview, that the troubles that I spoke about, I always was a little bit surprised when I saw her talking to other people and doing all this coaching. But I was like, you know what, if that makes you happy, go for it. But yeah, she got this cert from like a Christian organization. My mom's all about all the Christian organizations and like health shares and all that stuff. And she's now a life coach. And so yeah, she talks about marriage and biblical stuff, and she posts Bible verses a lot. And what I always find interesting about that, and what I was telling my sisters, is I was like, first of all, Stille im Land, quiet people in the land. Second of all, you're preaching to she's probably going to see this, but what at this point, you're preaching to women about how to be better wives and be more submissive, but at the same time you're also preaching, which is not that's not allowed. And really they're not supposed to be on social media in the first place. And it's like yeah, anyways, it's I have my own feelings about that. But yeah,
Well,
she ended up
you
just
don't have to you don't have to say more, because I was gonna comment on that and be like, how is she not getting in trouble for one, being on the internet, two, being like a public figure or a face, which I feel like most settlements would consider idolatry because you're not even supposed to really have your pictures taken. Well, maybe that's Amish. Is that the same for
We're allowed
Mennonite?
to
You can
have
have your picture
pictures.
taken. Okay, so scratch that point. Two, being some sort of authority or assertive voice as a female feels very counterintuitive or contradictory to the teachings themselves, which is what you just brought up. So everyone's fine with this? Her being this leader of sorts?
My dad is just, he's not very outspoken anymore these last couple of years. I mean, and it's kind of in the Mennonite community, it's like anything they can't bully anyone out of doing, they just stop talking about and just don't acknowledge unless they want to acknowledge it, which is kind of why, like, a lot of the stuff that I talked about in my interview, we had never talked about because it's like, they know they can't change it. So we're just going to kind of sweep it under the rug. So it's like
Yeah.
anyone who wants to interact with her in that way does, but anyone else just like pretends like it's not something she's doing, which again, it's only like 2,000 followers. But in a city of about like probably 10, 12,000 people, that's a decent amount considering they're mostly local to that city.
So here's a question for you then. Your mom is doing something that feels very progressive. And in some ways, she could be inspiring women to have a voice, which I'm all for. She could be inspiring women to do something for themselves instead of just be a homemaker. Essentially, she's like a Mennonite trad wife that's
A
on
little
social
bit.
media. So my question for you is based on, and you've probably seen some of her content, based on what she's actually telling women, do you think it's harmful? Like she's perpetuating things that are maybe not healthy for women, or do you think it's potentially empowering for others to see that?
I think she's encouraging. I have to give her props. I think she's trying to be encouraging. I think it comes from a good place in her head, but what she perpetuates is definitely harmful. She's 100% against birth control. She basically calls the pill abortion. Oh, sorry. I don't know if that's gonna get us in trouble with
I think it
YouTube.
should be okay.
She basically calls the pill that, and then she does not believe in divorce. She believes like no fault divorce is part of the, because she's pretty political, and she believes like no fault divorce is part of the reason our country is where it is now. And I'm like, okay, so you don't agree with women being able to leave their situation? She's like, no, because then they just go and live off of the government. So she basically preaches like no contraception, always listen to your husband, be submissive, how to be a better, more submissive wife. She's very much like the Gen X version of a trad wife. She's not like, oh, here's how you make donuts from scratch, but she's like, this is my ranch, and this is the Bible verse of the day. Here's how you can be a better wife, and it's like, I think a lot of it is definitely it ends up being harmful
It's
because
harmful.
it's the same stuff that keeps these women, because these women already, most of these women that she's talking to, they already don't have an education, they don't have any work experience, they don't have any money. The court system or the everyone around them, their community around them is not going to support them. And so if and a lot of them are, there is a lot of like violence in that community between spouses, between parents and
Mm,
children. And so you're preaching like stay, make your marriage work, while a lot of
yeah.
these women are like they're barely getting by.
Yeah. Someone just said she sounds like she's on the edge of leaving. Do you think that's the case? Do you think she's trying to convince herself to stay with everything she's preaching?
I wish a part of me felt like maybe that this me becoming more outspoken about my stuff would make them question things a little bit more. And sometimes I see glimpses because she is getting super into the actual biblical doctrine. And I find that when you really do that, that's when you start to question things and pick things apart and really either have to double down or start to question things. And the other
Mhm.
day, she said something that like blew my mind. And like I talked to her about spiritual stuff, even though I'm not religious anymore. I don't call myself a Christian. I would probably be more like agnostic at this point. But she was talking about something, and I was like, we were talking about different kinds of angels, and I was like, okay, well then do you believe that angels had gender? Do you believe that angels would have gender if we're going to be angels in heaven? And she's like, no, I don't really think so. I don't see what point there would be in angels having gender. And I'm like, okay, so you believe that when we die we won't really have a gender? She's like, yeah. I was like, well, I think if that was the if this all was, the situation, I think that's how it would be too. And so there's like little things there that I'm like, give me glimpses, but I try not to really like give myself false hope or anything like that because I'm just like everyone's gonna come to things at their own time, I guess.
Do you still have siblings at home with her?
I have two younger siblings, and that's part of the reason why for a long time I didn't speak out or anything because I always wanted to be that bridge if they needed someone, if they needed an example. And but I just realized that that wasn't healthy because it was just like I'm holding myself to a high standard to prove something to them that they can follow in my footsteps or whatever, and it just like wasn't healthy. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I have two younger siblings. I have two older siblings that are married with children, and then I have two younger brothers that are still at home, and they're so much younger than me that they're getting yet an even different version, an even different childhood than what I had or my sisters had.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I just looked at the time. You have to catch a flight. Let's do one more question real quick and then we'll let you go. We got a tight schedule here.
Yeah, sorry, I ramble. I can talk for hours about a lot of different things,
No,
and I
I
had
love
like
it. It's
three
perfect.
Nespressos before this, so.
It's perfect. Okay. Does she talk about you on her podcast? Ooh, that's a good question. Or on her channels, her social media.
Ah, I don't know if she talks about me and she does say mostly positive things. I don't think she really ever addresses the things that they don't agree with because I don't think that fits
Mhm.
her image. I really don't know how, especially after the interview came out, how she's gonna do it now because now it's like, hey, it's out in the open, everything that he's been doing and believing for a while. But when she does mention me, it is typically positive words. Like she's proud of how wise, you're a wise and very individual person. And I'm like, what she's
You
telling people
are.
without telling them is that I question her on everything. But she does
Oh,
talk
I
about me,
see.
but never really like the struggles of like my upbringing or like that different stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Well, everyone wants to have you back, so we're gonna have to at some point.
Yeah, definitely.
But
I'm
I'll
I'm
let
happy to come
you
back.
yeah, I'll let you go catch your flight. Thank you for joining us again. If you have not watched his original interview, guys, go do it now. The link is in the description, as well as his social media handles and how you can find him and support him and connect with him. And do you have any other final thoughts before we go?
I just wanted to say thank you for having me again. And I wanted to say to everyone, I've seen most of the positive comments. I want to respond to everyone. I know there's like questions and different stuff. I've just been on this 4-day trip. So I want to really thank everybody. Like I was definitely, there was a lot of emotions rewatching the interview and seeing what I said because I kind of just speak from the front of my mind a lot of times and really just internalizing what I said and seeing all that positivity come with it. It has really meant a lot to me. And so I did just want to thank
Oh,
everybody for, your kind words and reaching out.
yeah, I love that. And that's a great reminder to make sure to comment down below, especially after the video is posted. Any comments afterward help boost the algorithm. Any way you interact with the post is helpful. Liking, sharing, copying the link probably tells the algorithm you liked it too, even if you don't send it to anybody. And of course, subscribing. And if you like this interview, you're definitely going to want to check out after his Lavina. She was an incredible guest too. She left the Amish. Now she's a social media superstar. Speaking of that whole juxtaposition thing, but she's no longer Amish, so it's okay. And we have an entire playlist too on Mennonites and Amish, so check that out. And thank you guys for watching and for being here live. And until next time, follow your highest excitement, be conscious, and be well.